I am here with Philip McKernan, inspirational speaker, author, and filmmaker. Philip works with entrepreneurs and business leaders all around the world. As a speaker, he has inspired and challenged the Canadian Olympic team and the Pentagon, just to name a few. He loves to challenge the status quo and is considered a modern-day philosopher of the human experience. Welcome to the Soulcation Podcast, Philip.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So happy to have you here. I heard Philip speak last year at Thrive and this year at Thrive, and both times he's been phenomenal. So you all are in for a treat. So tell everyone about the Philip before you became such an influencer.
I don't think there's much. I don't think I'm that different, to be honest with you. I just think maybe I'm known a little bit wider, maybe a little bit more public facing, but I don't think there's a whole lot that's changed. I just think maybe a little bit of belief. I think, putting my flag in the sand and stating and standing for what I believe, and opening my big mouth and sharing my truth, and running the risk of both being accepted and rejected at the same time. And I don't really think there's a whole lot else to Philip McKernan other than that. I've been pretty much the same, I believe, all the way along.
You said about dealing with being accepted or rejected. Do you get caught up in that? Do you get caught up in being accepted or rejected?
Yeah, absolutely. Do I get caught in it? Not a huge amount, but am I aware of it, or am I cognizant of it, or does it bother me? Yes. And anybody who tells you that they don't care less about that is completely full of shit, in my personal opinion. I've not met a human being who's honest enough that actually has gotten to a point where they don't care. And I think if you don't care, you become machine-like. I think you should care, but it shouldn't get to a point where it holds you back and stops you from being who you are at your core, but obviously sharing your truth. And I think that's where it becomes detrimental. I think if you're in a relationship in an intimate relationship or a business partnership where you cannot be yourself, I think what ends up happening is you don't even know it, but subconsciously you're just holding back a part of yourself, and resentment builds over a period of time towards self or towards them or towards the unit. And therefore it's never going to work.
So for those of us who have built up resentment because of those things, what would you suggest that we do?
Honor it, like get in touch with it. I think one of the greatest things you can do is get in touch with how emotionally pissed off you are, how angry you are. I'm not asking you to express it in a violent way necessarily, but actually I think one of the things we do in society is we suppress how we feel a lot. So we use anger management as an example, as a tool that people use, which I think is a complete waste of time. You can't manage anger. I think what you need to do is honor the anger and acknowledge it and name it and allow yourself to feel it, so it dissipates and it starts to dissolve within us and within ourselves in the relationship, and then have the external conversation. I mean, a question for your audience today is, what's the most important conversation that you're simply not having? And often there's a conversation that we're avoiding, or we don't feel we should have, or we have no right to have, with almost everybody in our lives. And if we can identify that conversation, I literally had an email this morning from a man who we spent an hour together in a coaching environment, and he had built up this perception of how this conversation was going to go. He found the courage, or uncovered the courage, to have the conversation. And of course, alas, it didn't go as bad as he thought. In fact, if anything, it went 10 times better than he thought. So 99% of the time, when you have that conversation and you're ready for it, it'll always, if not very often, go the way that, not the way you expect it, but actually a better way. So to me, we're avoiding too many conversations in society today.
That's true.
Excuse me.
Because with every conversation is another layer of you being more vulnerable. So it is tough to have, but necessary to have.
Yeah, but the conversation starts here. So the most important conversation starts with the one at home. Often we rush to have a conversation externally, and then we say something, and we haven't prepared. I'm not talking about planning or preparing. I'm just talking about like being at peace with the conversation first. And then we don't do that sometimes. We rush out, we have a conversation, and then it's not met with the type of acceptance that we expect. And then we say to ourselves, you see, I shouldn't speak my truth. I should just keep my mouth shut, keep my emotions to myself, and that's the way it should be. And I guarantee you that's never going to work.
Wow, that's good. Be at peace with the conversation first. I like
that. And then choose to have it or not, but at least have it here, at least have it at home. And when you do that, you'll get a peace of mind, and it'll also give you clarity and courage about how to externalize those conversations to people that maybe intimidate you or scare you, or you're afraid of hurting. But there's always a way of having a conversation that frees you and eventually them as well.
Yeah, I agree. So what does it mean to have a relationship with yourself?
Well, it doesn't mean a whole lot to most people because most people don't have a relationship with themselves. So, and I would have been very much the same. I mean, to have a relationship with yourself is one of this. I've never said this before, but and this is why I don't want the questions in advance of in a podcast. While I appreciate you offering that, it's weird. It's kind of it's interesting. It's unusual. A lot of people think it's odd or weird, or a lot of people would say, "Yeah, I have a relationship with myself." To what extent, and what is that relationship like? You know, do you loathe yourself? Do you love yourself? Do you like yourself? Or do you like yourself on Sundays but not on Mondays? And it's not about perfection, but one of the things I encourage my clients to do is to go away for at least 2 nights on their own, every minimum once a year, like absolute bare minimum. That's just trying it. Ideally every 6 months, and in a perfect world, every quarter. And they go, and you say, oh, well, great, I know I do that. I go off and I plan my business, my podcast. No. This is to go away and just hang out with yourself. And I'm going to go like what? Meditate? No, just to hang out and be with yourself. And there are friends of mine and clients of mine who admitted that they can't even get in the car without putting the radio on because they're just so uncomfortable with silence. And it is the weirdest thing, the idea of going away with yourself for 2 nights. It's a physical expression of doing this. And I'm telling you, when I did this the first time, 2 things happened. Well, numbers of things happened. Well, 2 things happened. One is I felt the need to create an expectation to my wife. Now, don't worry. I'm going to come back and I'm going to have clarity and I'm going to have this and have all these business ideas, setting myself up for failure immediately. And the second thing is when I got to this little place, and I'm at 5-star hotels and remote, $500 a night. I'm talking about some shitty little cottage in the middle of nowhere, a tent. It doesn't matter. And I went away and I sat there and I went, God, I'm the guy preaching this. This is fucking awkward. This is horrible. Whose idea was this? And I was so uncomfortable. And then I tried to busy myself. I wanted to watch movies. I wanted to do this. And I just went for walks and I had lunch. And then slowly, I just got a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And I started to become a little bit of peace with myself. And it is arguably the most important thing I do for myself. And it's for me, not for anybody else. And I think in turn, I come back as a better father and as a better husband and as a better leader. And I do become more creative. But it's basically just nurturing that internal relationship with self. Because here's the problem. If you don't have, I'm not talking about having a photograph of yourself, on top of your bed, and every morning you wake up, love you, buddy, and all that crap, right? Or telling yourself affirmations that are bullshit. I'm talking about just having a level of self-respect and having a relationship with yourself where you're actually comfortable in your own skin. Here's the magic with this. Therefore, you don't need other people to make you happy. An intimate relationship, an external intimate relationship might enhance your journey in this world, but you don't need that person to make you happy. And I say this for particularly the single people in the world who deep down feel that they're missing something. Yeah. I would arguably say that even if the greatest man or greatest woman comes into your life, that missingness, I know there's no such word, but there is now, that missingness, that hole, whatever that is, that's always going to be with you. And what you're going to do is you're going to place too much expectation on your partner to fill that gap in you, as well as enhance your journey in this earth. They can't do that. That's not their job. And that's why so many relationships and divorces going through the roof and relationships are breaking up, because we put way too much emphasis on external individuals to make us happy for things that we're unwilling to look at ourselves.
That's so good. I'm really interested in this 2-day retreat. Like, how does that look? Is it something that you choose, or you just let your soul speak to you? Or is it you writing or meditating? What does it look like?
I don't believe in meditation as it's historically seen. Now, I just lost 80% of your audience probably.
Cool.
What I mean by that is I'm not saying you shouldn't meditate. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't think it's as powerful and as life-altering as everyone talks about. And I think it's a great tool and it's a wonderful mechanism or gift that we can use to enhance our journeys. I think people are using it in the wrong way. People are looking to meditation to give them answers that perhaps they already have. We're using meditation as a way to numb ourselves from the realities and the pains that we should face head on. And, you know, for example, and I'm going to give you a classic example of this. I went to a TM meditation, transcendental, or so, I don't know what the hell it was called. Anyway, I went to this meditation. It was great. Don't get me wrong. And the lady who was teaching it was a doll. She was beautiful, right? She was fantastic. She was so much fun. And we got on well. But she said, I said, why do you teach this meditation? She said, it saves my life. It saved my life, and I feel it saves my life. And I said, what do you mean? She says, I won't mention the industry in case somebody knows her, but she's in a very busy, competitive industry that has high stress. And she said, I've been in that industry for 12 years. And she says, the stress is crazy and I don't really like it, but meditation has saved me. It's allowed me to continue to stay in this industry. Now, that to me is fundamentally flawed. Okay, fundamentally flawed, because I don't believe we should use meditation to allow ourselves to put up with and to suffer from an enormous amount of stress. Now, I'm talking about stress that isn't fun. I'm not talking that edgy stress where, you know, you're excited and you're launching a new podcast or whatever, and there's a level of stress and concern. That's a bit different, and it's typically short-term lived. This lady did not enjoy the industry she was in, and she was using meditation as a way to numb or reduce the pain. My view is you got to look at the industry you're in. Are you loving what you're doing? Are you showing up every day and doing something you enjoy? Or do you feel at least it's part of something that nurtures you, or it's an expression of who you are? If you're not doing that, I don't care if it's meditation, marijuana, whiskey, sex, I don't care what it is. It's never, ever, ever, ever going to basically balance it out. It's a short-term thing. Eventually her body is going to give in physically, emotionally, or mentally. She's going to kind of break down at some point, where if she could deal with the misalignment in her life from a work standpoint and then meditate and just use that as something to deepen her experience and her journey in this earth, amazing, amazing. But don't use it to numb and to continue to put up with something that you know deep down is not serving you.
Yeah, I love it. For people who feel like they're stuck and unsure in their life right now, what advice would you give them? Whether it's in a job or in a relationship, they just feel stuck.
Well, I would ask them what stuck means. I mean, I would examine the stuckness. So I'd say, okay, great. Where do you feel stuck? And let's just say it's in my job. I'm doing a job I don't really enjoy. And I know this might sound irresponsible to some, but I'd be lying if I didn't feel that this is a necessary opportunity or possibility. And that is, you know, look for something more enjoyable while you still do your shitty day job. And I don't mean that in a condescending, derogatory way, because I've done lots of shitty day jobs. Trust me. And the reason I use that language, that kind of almost edgy, obnoxious language, is to make a point. Because if we say, if I'm sitting here going, well, I mean, I like my job, but I don't hate it. I like, you know, my new boyfriend, Josh, but I don't hate him. But he's a pain in the ass, but, you know, he doesn't kiss very well. Whatever other stories we're telling ourselves, there's no urgency to get out. So your job is either you love your job or you hate it, for the purposes of getting clear on what's important. Because if you start oscillating in between going, well, the office is amazing and the orange juice fresh every morning is fantastic. Now, I hate my boss and I don't feel we're doing anything meaningful in the world. But you know what? I get a really comfy leather seat and I've got a cool office looking out over the Golden Gate Bridge. And you know what? It's not bad. It's better than most of my friends. That person's not ready to make a change in their life. But if you can wake up and go, hang on, I don't give a shit how cushy my job is. I don't care how comfortable my seat is and how cool the orange juice is. I'm not expressing who I am on this earth. And if I continue to do this for the rest of my life or for a period of time, the cost is too high. You know, and we tell ourselves these stories that when I make enough money, then I'll have the freedom to do X. When I go out with Josh for another 5 years, then I'll understand men at a deeper level, and then I'll be able to find Mr. Perfect. That doesn't work. By continuing to dishonor yourself, you and poor Josh, whoever Josh is in the world, but by continuing to dishonor yourself in that relationship, you're losing more and more of yourself. So in 5 years, it's going to be even more difficult for you to find whatever perfect is for you. And if you stay in a job that doesn't honor you, you go further and further away from yourself, and therefore it's more difficult to find out what you want to do in the end. So understand, go deeper than just say, I feel stuck. Feeling stuck is basically saying, I'm lost, I'm desperate, I'm in pain, I'm unhappy, I'm out of alignment. But don't just say I'm stuck, because you got to go deeper and figure out what that is. And then execute on what you know. So in other words, let's continue the analogy, right? Josh, the personal relationship or business or job that you don't like, or a business you don't like, you understand that both of those are not serving you. Maybe there's an opportunity to pivot, to have a conversation, to change the dynamic. Great. But eventually, if it's still not working, if you don't have the clarity of what's next in either of those situations, it doesn't mean you can't act. It doesn't mean you can't act. I'm not talking about acting as in pretending and staying. I'm talking about acting as in taking action and executing, because the Vikings, many years ago would get to land and they would turn around before they headed into the jungles, into the mountains, they would burn the ships because there was no going back. And for me to sit here, my dad would say, God, that's so irresponsible. But for me to sit here and tell you that I don't believe there should be a real tangible option would be irresponsible of me, because this is what I've done. Sometimes you just got to break up with Josh to free him and to free yourself, and walk out of that shitty job and figure out what's next. Because you'll figure it out. And sometimes when you're going out with somebody and you're dating somebody, you're saying, well, I'll stay in this relationship because I don't want to be lonely until I find the right person. Then I'll let Josh know on a text message or on a Facebook message that he's gone. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that has never happened in the history of humanity. You're looking guilty right now. We're going to go back to you in a second. I'm kidding. But I'm just saying that's not healthy. That's not what I feel we should do. We should honor ourselves and honor that person, set them and ourselves free and open to the universe and see what the universe is going to send us.
I agree 100%. Since you've transformed so many lives, what has that done for you? Because you've touched a lot of people, inspired a lot of people. And I'm actually cool with one of your clients, Nina.
Oh yeah, I know Nina. Yeah.
So you've inspired a lot of people. So what has that done for you?
Okay, so here's what I want to say. So my ego wants to jump in and go, no, I have. I've transformed so many lives, but here's the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, the truth is I haven't transformed shit. Okay, but you have nailed one thing. I do feel I've inspired them to transform and translate, whatever, grow, whatever term you want to use, their own lives. And that is a big distinction. And I want to make that really clear. I believe I'm very good at what I do. I have dedicated the rest of my entire existence on this earth to doing the work I do to help people grow and change aspects of their life and pivot and transition. But at the end of the day, I'm not as good. I'm not that good. So I'm not this godlike, individual who can wave a wand. My work is only as good as the people that step in. So the Ninas of this world, they can be exposed to my work. They can read my books. They can do whatever. But at the end of the day, unless they're willing to be open to change and believe they have the courage within them already, they don't have to find it, to execute and make a change and put a value in your own skin, and they want to make an impact in the world, that's them. It's not me.
That's good. Because it takes us taking a step and courage that we have within ourselves, just like you said. So I agree.
Yeah, but here's the challenge with courage. A lot of people don't think they have a lot of courage, or they have any courage at all. So I'm reluctant to say it takes a lot of courage to do something. And I'm not trying to be argumentative. I agree it takes a degree of courage, but the courage is there. I've seen it. I just think a lot of us don't self-identify it. And I certainly didn't for most of my life. When I look back over my life now that I'm a little bit wiser, not a lot wiser, just a little bit, and I'm going to be a lot wiser in the future, I hope. I look back and I realize actually I've started to look at where did courage show up in my life. And courage showed up in my life in probably unusual ways. So people think about execution as courage. In other words, wow, McKernan, you moved from Ireland, the country you loved, to the other side of the world. Wow. You became a keynote speaker, even though that's the last thing on earth you wanted to do because you were so ashamed of yourself. You didn't want to be seen by the world, whatever. In your case, the courage of doing a podcast, because it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. But I disagree a little bit, because I think they're the results. They're the byproduct of something else. The courage comes when you can literally sit at home without acting, without actioning or doing anything, and have the courage to look at yourself or look in the mirror and say, am I happy?
Mm,
Is this it?
that's good.
Do I love what I do? Do I love who I am? Is this the extent of my journey? What if my greatest work has yet to come? What if I've been executing my talent all these years, but I've never honored my gift? And my gift is something that the world has not gotten to see, witnessed, felt, smelt, or seen once yet. That's the courage.
Yeah.
We put way too much value on action. Action is required, of course, eventually, but action is a byproduct of something much more meaningful. And that is the willingness to look at ourselves and ask ourselves beautiful, simple, courageous questions and have this massive depth of courage that already lies there to answer them honestly. And that answer could be sometimes, I don't know. There's no greater, more vulnerable, courageous words in the world than I don't know. And yet it is, those words are disappearing from language in the universe because we feel as parents, as leaders, as guides, as podcast hosts that we need to have the answers. And if we're not seen to have the answers, we're actually weak. I disagree. Yeah. One of the most beautiful things I hear from people is when they can turn around and say, I'm scared and I don't know. Yeah. That's humanity. Yeah. That's leadership. That's inspiration.
Yeah. Because a lot of times we don't know.
Yeah, of course we don't know. And we're not meant to know. That's the point. We're not meant to know. Yeah. And it doesn't mean we have to sit on an island and not take action. We can continue to move, but we're not meant to know where we're going. And this goal-setting frenzy that has entered the world, goal-setting and having dreams or aspirations or having intentions, they're important. But sitting down and goal setting for everything is actually, I think most people who obsessively goal set are blindly going in a direction that they think intellectually they want to go, but it doesn't necessarily always serve them spiritually.
That's good. So tell us about your book, One Last Talk.
The most important piece of literature I have ever written. And I believe it's written on behalf of the men and women who have done their one last talks and are going to be doing their one last talk. So to me, it's just really important. The basic essence of it is if you were given 15 minutes or less to stand on a stage to share your one last talk, what would you say and who would you say it to? And the premise is that you're not allowed to speak about global warming, Donald Trump, the state of, I don't know, the health system, any of that stuff. You've got to speak and talk about your personal truth, your personal narrative, and typically share a story that perhaps you've never shared with the world before. The part of yourself that perhaps you're ashamed of, the part of yourself that you feel doesn't have value, the part of yourself that you have hidden from the world. And what that does is it frees you from that truth. And it also allows other people to be freed by that truth because they relate to it at some level. And you don't have to be a speaker. You don't have to aspire to be a speaker. The idea is you go through the one last talk process. And I believe that we deliver to at least one other human being. And the cathartic, therapeutic coaching that we get from it is incredible. It's one of the most freeing mechanisms that we've created to help people all over the globe to create their one last talks and deliver it. So
where does this take place?
So it started with a live event and we are continuing with those live events. So we have live events coming up in across Canada. We have one coming up in Boulder in the new year. We have one in Australia in 2019, Ireland 2019. And these are called One Last Talk local events. So these are evening events where we have 4 speakers share their one last talk live. And then the audience get to participate. And typically these speakers have never spoken publicly before. So this is not your same speaker circuit of these well-known gurus all circling around the same stages. These are the men and women in the audience. Hopefully will be the men and women standing on the stage the next time. Also, we've created an environment where it's a two-way dialogue. It's not just somebody preaching. It's an opportunity to talk to the speakers and ask them questions and go deeper. So live events, we're also going to be creating a mechanism online where people can upload their one last talks to share with the world. We're creating a podcast. It'll be launched in the next 6 weeks. And then the book is going to take people through every step they need to do to understand who they are, what's important to them, and how they can share their truth. And again, the invitation and challenge at the end is to deliver to at least one human being. And I'm going to tell you one thing very quickly. We had 2 reading committees that read the book in advance, 10 people who knew me well, and not unusual, but they liked the book a lot. And no disrespect, but they were kind of blinded or a little bit maybe emotionally invested in me. And then 10 people who didn't really know me. And of those 10 people, there was one guy that hated the book. And there was another guy who hated the book. And I'm talking about, they didn't give us constructive feedback. They just lambasted the book. They just hated it. And one of the 2, which I thought was amazing, decided that he was going to go through the exercise and he was going to complete it just to prove to himself that I'm full of shit, excuse me, and the concept is flawed. And he did it, delivered his one last talk to his parents, and it transformed their relationship. And he's now one of our greatest, biggest fans, and the book is not even out yet. So even if it doesn't sound like something you're into, I would challenge you to consider it. And I want people to take it. I want them to run retreats in their houses or workshops. I want them to get their 20 friends. I want them to each get a book, create their one last talk, come deliver their one last talks over a glass of wine, have conversations about it. We want to gift this to the world. We want people to take one last talk local and run it in their cities in conjunction with us. But we also want people to take this into their organizations, their companies, because it is a great way of deepening connection in humanity, which I think we're losing and is leaking out of the ship all over the place at the moment.
Definitely. I agree. I love that. I will share the link to Amazon and your website under the podcast, so people can definitely purchase the book.
Yeah, onelasttalk.com, or they can get the book on Amazon. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So this is Rapid Soul Questions. It's the first thing that comes to your mind. These are fun. These are fun questions.
Okay. This is the person who knows what the questions are.
Right. Okay, name one person that you think is really funny.
Oh, shit. My daughter, Maggie.
Okay. I met her at Thrive. She's really sweet. And your son.
She's hilarious. She's nuts, but she's hilarious. She's as mad as a brush, as we say in Ireland.
What's the last song you listened to?
The last song I listened to was, oh my God, this is embarrassing. Erasure. I don't know which one I saw, but there's Erasure, this electronic music that was out back in probably the 80s or probably the 80s and early 90s. And it's a band that, you didn't want to tell people that you followed, but I love their music. And I found it on Spotify this morning, Erasure. I don't know which song it was, but it's absolutely cool.
I have to look it up to see what you're talking about. What dessert can't you live without?
I don't know if it's not even dessert for me. It's just chocolate, period.
Me too. It's so wonderful.
Screw dessert. Chocolate every day of the week, before dinner, during dinner, after dinner.
Me too. My dentist doesn't like it, but hey. What trait do you like the most about yourself?
I care so deeply for humanity.
I love it. What is one product that you must use every day besides your phone?
My Apple Mac, or there's something else that I just used the other day. Actually, I've got this weird thing in my hand. It's called a Whoop. The most ridiculous name ever. If anyone listens to this from the company, it's a stupid name. WHOOP, but it basically monitors sleep, monitors the strain you put in your body, and also monitors how your body recovers. And I would normally have looked at technology and stuff like this and have rolled my eyes and go, what a load of crap. But actually, in fact, I've just started using it the last 10 days and it's been fantastic.
Oh, wow. Whoop. Okay.
Whoop. I know. Strange name.
If you could go to dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be?
My mom.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Oh, my mom's amazing. So is my dad. No disrespect to my dad, but my mom's cool.
Okay. What's one book that you believe everyone should read besides all 4 of yours? You have 4 books?
I've actually written 5 books, but the latest book is the only one that I would buy if you knew me, or maybe the last one, Rich on Paper, Poor on Life. The book that I would actually, there is a book. I don't read a lot because I'm dyslexic. Another story for a different day. But there's a book called The Unsung Hero, and it's about an Irish explorer who went with Shackleton up into the Antarctic or down the Antarctic, whichever way it is. I always get confused. And what it does, it tells this amazing story about, leadership and strength, but also not necessarily being the person in the spotlight. And it shows that these people that are in the spotlight also can't survive or do what they do without their team. So Amy in my office, I can't live without her. She doesn't get she doesn't get named in these podcasts. She doesn't get the recognition, and yet she's a massive part of our team. And Pauline, my wife. So the unsung hero is the book, and it's around this man called Tom Crean, I think it is, and it's an incredible story. Incredible story.
Yeah, I agree. Like, what would we do without the people in the background? And they're not in the background in our eyes, but other people don't know them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I get all this credit and I get all this, accolades or whatever. And yet there's a team, it's a very small team of people behind me. And they make me, if I do look good, and maybe I don't, but if I do look good, they make that happen.
Definitely. I agree. So last question, what are you looking to do next and how can we support you?
I want to grow One Last Talk. That's it. I mean, I'm just unapologetic. If you go back to any interview I've ever done, I'm very shy when it comes to sales or positioning my work or my coaching or whatever. I do coaching workshops. I do one-to-one stuff. I rarely ever mention it, but this is different because I feel it's not about me. I believe it's about this movement that's bigger than and wider and more important than I'll ever be. And just help us spread the word about One Last Talk. It is game-changing in terms of the impact it's made for people, how it's transformed their relationships. And the speakers, by the way, just every speaker that speaks, every one of them gets up there thinking, my story doesn't matter. Every one of them leave that stage feeling, oh my God, I matter in a way I never imagined. And they have family members in the room, and it has transformed relationships. Physicality, one woman who had, spots all over her body that were manifesting herself physically by something she was unwilling to address. One Last Talk brought it to the surface. She shared in her case that she'd been raped, and for the first time ever, literally physically her body started to clear up and all the spots went away. Like there's something magically important about sharing our truth and freeing it to the world so we can free ourselves and humanity. So I don't want to harp on about it, but it is the most important thing we've ever done.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Philip. Make sure you all share this episode with as many friends as possible. Thank you for coming on to the Soul Creation Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Thank you.